I recently completed my 54th weekly review. This means I've been doing weekly reviews for over a year. In this video, I will go over the 5 biggest lessons I've learned in the process. What is a weekly review? The term weekly review comes from David Allen's seminal productivity book, Getting Things Done. How it's done changes from person to person. In general, however, it's a periodic review of your productivity system where you look at your to-do list, calendar, active projects, communication mediums, and goals to make sure everything is set for next week. For the most part, this is the first half of my weekly review, but the most exciting and insightful part comes in the second half when I review my journal. In my daily journal, I jot down the most noteworthy moments of my day and who I spent time with. I write down my story-worthy moment, a concept from Matthew Dick's book, Storyworthy, where I write down the most story-worthy 5-minute moment from my day. I also answer a few journaling prompts like, what are my greatest fears and anxieties? What is the best thing I learned? And what could I have done better? Lastly, I evaluate myself on my 3 most important values: evangelizing the peanut butter religion, destroying other people's hopes and dreams, and spending exorbitant amounts of time creating content nobody watches. Nah, I'm just joking. Only a little. My actual 3 most important values are health, relationships, and teaching. I chose each of these 3 values while developing a philosophical system I call addition through subtraction, or ATS. It borrows from Stoicism, Buddhism, and Liadi Kolt's book, Subtract: The Untapped Science of Less, which you can watch my Book Squad summary on up above. The main tenet of ATS is everlasting happiness often comes from subtracting rather than adding. Subtracting what? Almost everything. Commitments, number of friends, values, possessions, etc. In my weekly review, I go through each of these values and ask myself how I followed them well, as well as what I can improve on next week. Now that you know what a weekly review is, let's talk about the 5 most significant lessons I've learned after reviewing 54 of them. Lesson 1, write down your best memories. The first lesson I learned is how important it is to write down your best memories so you don't forget them. For example, last summer on July 9th, my brother and a group of our friends were trying to create a movie with our senior friends. We wanted something epic to commemorate our last year together before we all went to college. On filming day, everyone showed up except for 2 of the most critical actors, making it impossible to record. But instead of sending everyone home, my brother and I made something out of the situation by cooking everyone some Dutch chocolate poffertjes. They're a Dutch version of classic pancakes shaped like balls. Just look at them. God, I am hungry. We had a fantastic time discussing our summers and college hopes while eating them. But for some reason, I had forgotten entirely about this memory until I saw it through one of my weekly reviews. Unfortunately, this wasn't the only thing I had forgotten. While going through my 32nd weekly review, I came across one of the funniest, it's a word, fight me, statements a friend has ever made to me. It was during a lunch conversation at Cornell University on February 5th. My friend Amos was telling me about a test he had crammed for during the last semester at Cornell. During a study session 2 nights before the test, he felt a need for some energy. So naturally, he drank 2 massive cups of coffee, a Bang Energy, and a chocolate coffee bar. He could feel his heart beating through his chest. He thought he was going to die. But in his words, it was all worth it in the end because, get this, he thought he would reach nirvana. I was crying laughing for minutes after that one. Lesson 2, weekly reviews allow for lifestyle design. The second lesson I learned is how valuable weekly reviews are for lifestyle design. Each weekly review is a goldmine of personal data. On any particular day, it's hard to notice the consistency and activities that bring you the most joy. But when you reflect on your life over weeks, months, and even years, you gain insight into what the best average day is for you. This allows you to take active steps to make your next week more enjoyable. For example, I can tell from my journal I enjoy exercise, writing, reading, socializing with friends or classmates, and thinking up plans to take over the world. It's also clear I like having time in the morning to spend for myself. So most days I wake up around 6 a.m. I've also noticed I'm more relaxed if after dinner time, around 6:30 p.m., I shut my brain off from work. Each time I realize this during a weekly review, I take active steps to reflect it in my calendar. For example, I pre-schedule activities like reading, exercise, writing, and socializing in my calendar to ensure no other commitments take over. I know these activities bring me joy. As mentioned earlier, my weekly review also has a section where I go through my 3 biggest values: health, relationships, and teaching, and reflect on what I can do better next week. This has also led me to make lifestyle changes. For example, a weekly review on my value for teaching led me to integrate my mom, dad, and grandfather into reading my unfinished writings from my blog and YouTube channel. This is because I realized I didn't have enough sources of feedback for my YouTube scripts and blog posts. Once I'd integrated them in, they became so much better. Lesson 3, your life is a story. The third lesson I learned is how much our lives are like stories. On a single day, it's easy to see life as boring and mundane. Most people wake up, hit the snooze button a few times, rush to eat breakfast and slam a coffee down their gullet, go to work or school, and then come back home exhausted and ready to watch television for hours. But by looking at your life through weeks, months, and years, you begin to see stories pop up everywhere. One of the biggest ongoing stories I uncovered was a story of my growing love for teaching. It started in March of 2021 when I began creating content on my YouTube channel. I didn't think anything would come of it. I simply liked watching other YouTubers like Will Tennyson and thought it would be fun to give it a shot. At first, I did stupid fitness challenges and gave workout advice. I created YouTube videos of myself trying to eat the most popcorn I could in one sitting. Please don't search for that video. Please don't search for that video. I have read many books.
We want to see if anyone out there can.
Over time, I moved on to giving reading tips, personal book summaries, and advice for building a second brain. Then, on November 14th, I taught online at my first Splash event. This is an event where you can teach a group of high schoolers a class on anything you want. I taught one class on habit-changing basics and another on the science of learning. Seeing my excitement for that, my mom let me teach a storytelling class to her AP biology students at Hamilton Central School. After this, I took 2 education classes during my second semester at Cornell. One where I taught a Cornell employee about stress management and communication skills, and another where I got to teach my previous class, Habit-Changing Basics, based on James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, to a group of sophomore high school students. Now, I'm continuing my love for teaching by considering pursuing a PhD and becoming a professor of human development in psychology. Lesson 4, you can repurpose past ideas. The 4th lesson I learned is weekly reviews allow us to repurpose our past selves' ideas. While going through my weekly review, I came across insane amount of ideas I had completely forgotten about. Here are a few examples. Future podcast ideas. I've long wanted to create a podcast, but never knew when I would have the time for one. Nevertheless, I sometimes discussed with friends and family what it could look like when I made one. Over time, I began to write down podcast formatting ideas, possible co-hosts, ideas for what to talk about, and more in my journal. Now that I'm finally starting a podcast, I'm getting a tremendous amount of insight from going back through these past ideas. A thought leaders page. The idea to create a thought leaders page on my website came from a daily journal on February 11th, 2022. My thought leaders page documents the internet influencers who have had the most impact on my life with links to their content mediums, so you can also learn from them. Finally, the idea for the 1% rule I have with my YouTube video editor came from a daily journal on December 31st, 2021. The 1% rule is a rule where I give my editor one thing to improve on or edit to implement in our next video together. The idea is over time, we'll get incrementally better and better without much effort. Lesson 5, you can discover your underlying psychology. The fifth lesson I learned is how doing weekly reviews can help you uncover your underlying psychology. For instance, I've realized I have a very judgmental way of thinking. Throughout tons of my journal entries, I discuss how I wish my dad would stop drinking so much coffee, read the news less, or stop buying so much stuff. I do this frequently with other people, often making little nitpicks on their lifestyle choices compared to mine. By uncovering this natural part of my psychology, I can now take steps to fix it. In the last year, I've tried to voice my judgments less and think more of the positive aspects of people. I also notice how easily I neglect relationships if I don't reschedule social time. I uncovered this aspect of my psychology after seeing how often I would go until dinner without talking to a friend or family member. Not surprisingly, these were often the days I enjoyed least, even if I got a lot done. But because I can now see these psychological tendencies for what they are, I can reduce their effect on my life. Why should you do a weekly review? Doing weekly reviews for the past 54 weeks has changed my life dramatically. On the day-to-day, it's hard to notice the activities that regularly bring us joy. But over weeks, months, and years, the data begins to collect and give insight into our forgotten memories, stories, ideas, and inner psychological tendencies. It's all perfectly encapsulated with this one idea. Wisdom doesn't come from experience. It comes from reflecting on experience. Perhaps the best part about doing weekly reviews is they let you be maximally present during each day, because we know our task and management systems have been well cleaned out in preparation for the week. The day is the largest unit of time we can focus on at once. A lot of anxiety and stress comes from thinking about the things that aren't happening at the moment. In this way, doing weekly reviews isn't some cheap productivity trick. It's a deeply spiritual and philosophical practice that over time can help you live the best life for you. Check out my video on how to do a weekly review up above. I take you through my in-depth weekly review process so you can learn to do one yourself. As always, have a fantastic rest of your day, and bye-bye.